Mesdames et messieurs, bonjour. On est très heureux de recevoir Ryan Coogler parce que d'abord, on se sent comme en famille avec lui, ou en tout cas, on est content de retrouver un jeune cinéaste que nous avons co-découvert avec le festival de Sundance et avec le Certain Regard ici, puisque c'est ici qu'il a montré son premier film, Fruitvale Station. Puis après, de loin en loin, on a suivi Creed, on a suivi ce parcours qu'il mène avec Michael B. Jordan et jusqu'à ce Black Panther, qui est un film très extraordinaire aux deux sens du mot. C'est un film extraordinaire parce que c'est un magnifique film, et c'est un film extraordinaire par la place qu'il occupe déjà dans l'histoire du cinéma mondial et qu'il occupera dans l'histoire du cinéma, et dont on peut dire qu'elle est quasiment déjà la même que celle de Alléluia de King Vidor et de ces films Pierre de Touche qui ont marqué l'histoire. Pour avoir cette discussion, nous avons demandé à quelqu'un qu'on aime aussi beaucoup, qui est un critique, un historien, un universitaire, un cinéphile, quelqu'un de formidable et qui a un prénom très, très, très exceptionnel. Je voudrais que vous l'accueilliez, comme vous venez de le faire, avec beaucoup de chaleur, Elvis Mitchell. Plus fort, voilà. Et maintenant, il est temps donc d'accueillir l'un des cinéastes les plus talentueux, les plus prometteurs, les plus formidables, les plus je sais pas quoi, qu'il soit dans le cinéma mondial contemporain, monsieur... Ah non, avant... Je voulais saluer la présence à ses côtés, et c'est une présence aujourd'hui, et c'est une présence en général, de son épouse, Zinzi Coogler, qui est là. Et maintenant, donc, il est temps d'accueillir le talentueux, le prometteur, le plus extraordinaire de tous les jeunes cinéastes du cinéma mondial, monsieur Ryan Coogler. Gentlemen, be good.
Yes, sir.
Huh?
Merci.
So,
Thank you guys for coming out. It means a lot.
yeah.
And thank you, Terry, for all the kind words in French. You on to the
God. First of all, you have 60 students you brought here. Talk about that for a second.
Oh man. Whew. We do a lot of. I've had an opportunity to do a lot of film festivals and a lot of talks in the past, and sometimes it can be challenging when you in a talk and you look out and you don't see faces that look like yours. You know?
I don't know what you're talking about. What do you mean?
It could be challenging sometimes. I just remember being a film student. Like my first time I'd ever been out of the country was at this festival, and it changed my life as a filmmaker. You know, just being around the festival, being around this many people that were excited about making movies and passionate about making movies and from different parts of the world, and just seeing how intense the culture here is at the festival. You know, it was really. It really did something to me, you know, as a filmmaker, providing me with a lot of motivation. So I thought it would be cool if we could, you know, find a way to tap in and bring some local filmmakers, some young filmmakers that are from the area and from Paris. And I thought it'd be cool if they were like, you know, if they were also from Africa. You know what I'm saying? So hopefully some of them are here. Are you guys here? Yeah. Bet. That's what's up. That's what's up. Yeah. But shit. So it was. So I thought it'd be cool to do that. And have them come to the festival for at least a day, and see us talk.
Okay. I guess the first thing I want to bring up to you is all three of your films have really been family dramas, haven't they? Fruitvale is the way I think of it. Fruitvale and Creed and Black Panther. They're all finally, and first and foremost, they're family dramas, aren't they? Yes.
Yeah, I think they are. I would look at them like that for sure.
Because this feels like a trilogy to me, because there are three movies about what happens to young black men without fathers in America. You look at Fruitvale and Creed and Killmonger and Black Panther. I mean, that's to me the thing that brings them all together. What is it about that subject that you keep going back to?
Oh man,
you must get that question a lot, don't you?
Nah, I haven't gotten it a whole bunch. I think it's not something that I'm conscious. It wasn't something that I was consciously going for with each project. It was probably more subconsciously. Because Fruitvale was a real story that happened. And I didn't know anything about Oscar's life before he was murdered. Everything was. I knew I wanted to make a film about it. I know I'd seen his mom and his uncle, speaking out. But it wasn't until I started to do research that I found out that Oscar's father, had been incarcerated his whole life. His father's still in prison now, and he didn't have his dad, outside ever. So that was something that I discovered later once I realized that I wanted to make the film. For Creed, that film was about, about the relationship that I had with my father. That was kind of the motivation there. So the father-son relationship there was kind of like, it was a what if. It was a what if my dad wasn't in my life. What if he was this guy that I just heard about and I had to kind of live up to. I always had my dad. And then with Killmonger, that was something specific that we built around the story. But I think that for me, my relationship that I had with my father is, my relationship with my parents are the most important relationship I had in my life until I got married, and then that changed it. But my father, my relationship with my father was the most unique relationship that I had in my life, because a lot of my friends didn't have fathers, growing up, and that was oftentimes there was a tension there between me and my friends because my dad wasn't around, so it was something that I've always been interested in, that dynamic, that father-son dynamic, and what it means, specifically in the African American community, and now with Black Panther, we kind of extended it to the African community,
But I guess for me, though, that's such an important thing, and it's something we don't see in films, that idea of there's really a collateral cost for young men of color growing up not knowing their fathers. And to see that in three different kinds of stories, I think is a really remarkable thing. And I think it's one of the things that, for people of color I know, it really touched them. It's a story you don't see told in a way that we can see that moment sometimes in a lot of movies where somebody loses their father, but living your whole life without that presence and kind of pining for it,
right,
is really a remarkable thing to put in a movie.
Yeah, I think that a lot of like when I look back, just talking with you, Elvis, and Elvis, a friend of mine, man. We talk when we see each other. We don't see each other much, but we talk. We go off about movies and comic books, and he always makes me think about things. But when I think about like two movies that I saw actually with my dad that really shaped. That really shaped me as a young black man. They were one movie by John Singleton, one movie by Spike Lee. I was very young. I saw Boys in the Hood in the theater with my dad, and I saw Malcolm X in the theater with my dad. I think my dad might have took me out of school to see Malcolm X, which is crazy when I look back on it. And it's also crazy because those movies are like mad violent. You know what I mean? They super like not for kids, but I was like super young watching them.
How old were you?
Man, I was born in '86, so.
God, you were a little kid when you saw those movies.
Like it was '91 and like '92 maybe. So I was young. I was very young. Watching those movies. But those films, if you think about those films, like Boys in the Hood, you know, Trey is the only one of those friends that had a dad, you know, and it's something that's kind of like, it's not explicitly stated, but it's stated pretty good. And then you think about Malcolm X, and it was a big thing in that story about how his father was murdered. You know what I mean? How his father, I think the Klan had put him on train tracks or something like that. Yeah, like, and it was something that's kind of mentioned, you know, and in those films, you know, that element is there, you know. So I think that you know that it's something that's been commented on, but I've been fortunate to be able to do it pretty explicitly in my films.
And also, too, you've made 3 movies where you had a woman cinematographer and a woman editor.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's not something that, I mean, I think it's not something that obviously it's not something to brag about, you know.
I don't know. It's not something that's common.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, for my first film, I was just looking for the best cinematographer I could find. You know, I was looking for the best cinematographer. Rachel Morrison was that. You know what I mean? She was the best DP we could get at the time. You know what I'm saying? And it turned out that that she was like just. You know, it turned out that I thought I was getting somebody amazing, but she turned out to be just incredible. You know what I mean? Like just phenomenal in every way, and our dispositions kind of matched each other. You know, so that was you know, we were extremely lucky to get her for that project. And then when it came time to shoot Creed, Rachel was pregnant. You know, and like not just like a little bit pregnant, but like dude, while we would have been shooting, you know. And her, she's so Rachel, so she's really lovely and sweet, but she's also like mad intense and almost like militarized when it comes to like filmmakers. So she was like, no, I'll be out for like 2 days. I'll squeeze the baby out, and then I come back, pick the camera back up, and I'm like, you know, that was literally what she was saying, you know, like, and I'm like, I don't think that's gonna work on this one, you know. And she's like, okay, you're right. Can y'all push? Like, can we, you know? But so we ended up not working out. And then what ended up happening for that one, you know, the best cinematographer that we could get for Creed, the most qualified was a woman named Maurice Alberti, who's actually French, and she had shot The Wrestler. She had Velvet Goldmine. You know, but her work on The Wrestler was really attracted me to it. Wrestler was something that Rachel and I would watch, you know, when we were thinking about Fruitville. And when it comes to like the physical combat of it, and Creed, for me, a bit of Creed was commentary on people who work with their bodies. You know what I'm saying? People who use their bodies for their occupation. You know, professional athletes, dancers. You know, they fall on that same scale of you know, that's the more glamorized version of it. But then you have people who work in the sex industry, you know what I'm saying, who fall on that same scale, which is the least glamorized version of it, you know what I'm saying? But this idea of having to work with your body, and I thought that what Aronofsky and Maurice did in The Wrestler was one of the more visceral things I've seen about that. You know, when I spoke with Maurice, she was like, okay, yeah, you know, she was interested. And then when we hired her, she hadn't, it's funny, she hadn't realized that there had been so many Rocky movies. She thought it just been Rocky 1 and Rocky 2, and that was it. And then she was like, wait, so this is the 7th one? What am I doing? We were literally like in the scouting van, and she was like, oh my God, what am I doing? But she was phenomenal, man. And then when Panther came around, you know, Rachel, you know, wasn't pregnant. You know, Wiley was a little older. So then she was like, let's go, and we were able to do it on Panther.
So talk about the movies you watched to get ready for Panther. You talked about some of the stuff you watched, like The Wrestler. What do you watch, for example, when you're putting the Panther together in your head and you're trying to figure out that template for it?
Wow, okay, so let's see, we watched the first, like, so when I first sat down with Marvel, they were saying like they wanted Panther to feel like they're James Bond, which I was excited about, because I love James Bond movies.
Do you have a favorite James Bond movie? Or a favorite James Bond? Besides Idris?
Casino Royale. I think it's hard to say favorites, but I mean I think Casino Royale, but I watched the Connery watched the Connery one,
Goldfinger.
It's terrible because I've seen Goldmember before I saw Goldfinger. So I always crisscross. I know, yeah.
You are very young, my friend.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is this feedback in a little bit?
He is very Hendrixy, yeah.
Is there anything I can do?
Maybe move it down a little bit, move it down.
Yeah. Is it bouncing off your mic, maybe?
I'll just go sit in the audience.
No. Maybe I'll turn it down?
No, it should be, try it now to see how it works.
Okay, are we better? Yeah. Okay. Hey, we're like, bro, fix that feedback. You're embarrassing me.
He thought you were doing it on purpose.
Oh, man. So the films that we watched.
Yeah.
So we watched, obviously a bunch of Bond films, did research on old ones. But that was like early research, and that was kind of like a baseline. Once we realized the themes that we wanted to explore, we started to watch, different films. A big one when we realized that. Oh yeah. Okay, so we back. No more feedback. We good? I bet. So a big one was we realized, all right, so we making a film about a guy who lives in this kind of secretive country that nobody really knows about. He works with his family. His father dies, and now he has to step into this position of power. And it's like, oh man, we gotta look at Godfather. Like it's like one of the greatest films ever made, and it's basically about the same subject matter. So that was when we kind of pivoted, and I kind of realized that the best way for me to look at Black Panther is kind of like a crime movie. So it's kind of a movie about a shadow organization, you know what I mean? And organized crime films tend to be the best movies about that. So once we pivoted and looked at the Godfather films, that was when a lot of things started to open up for us, But it wasn't something we could talk. It wasn't something we could talk about, you know what I mean? Because you just feel embarrassed, man. Like you're making a superhero movie, but it's like you're trying to make it like the Godfather. You sound crazy, Like. People are like, oh yeah, God, okay, So like, it was something that we kind of just said. I think my executive producer, I think Nate said it to somebody one time. I was like, Nate, what are we doing, man? He's like, no, it'll be fine. But I was worried about people thinking that we were like aiming too high or whatever,
Were you really worried about that? I mean,
yeah, a little bit. Like, it gets to a certain point in art, man, where some stuff is sacred, if for good reason, and I think that his work on those films was, but just what he was doing about like getting deep into Italian American culture and through that Italian culture,
But he looked at movies that influenced him. I mean, he looked at Visconti. He uses the leopard for the whole wedding sequence. So I mean, movies influence movies, and that becomes the language that you're using to communicate with, doesn't it?
Absolutely. So we watched those films, and then another thing we would do is we watched like films that felt like you were experiencing different cultures that felt otherworldly, but that were on planet Earth. So we looked at Baraka and Samsara. We would screen those with our whole art department, and just kind of take those in and then talk about them after. Planet Earth, 1 and 2, we would watch those a lot for like just kind of figuring out how we wanted the aerials and Wakanda to feel, and we watched a film called Timbuktu.
Sure.
To get a feel for just like what Africa feels like now, and seeing people dealing with current situations. Like in Timbuktu is an old city, so you got this vibe of this history here in this place. And butting up against modern issus.
You also got all those great colors in Timbuktu.
Oh man, yeah, it's a perfect movie. It's a perfect movie. Yeah. And the music in Timbuktu, I watched it with Ludwig Göransson, our composer, and we just kind of watched it and ran it back, listening to it, and we pulled some of that music, some of that stuff of Ali Farkator, into the film, and it was, and then there was a lot of other stuff we looked at too. Oh, Embrace of the Serpent.
Oh yeah, sure.
We
were just about this last night.
Yeah, just the idea of colonization, and mysticism. But it was, we were watching hundreds of movies, man.
Was Godfather also for the father-son relationship too?
Absolutely, for the father-son relationship. Just the idea of secession, I think, I don't know if there's a better film about that, having to step into shoes that you think are that can't be, can't be filled. And the secrets, the idea of somebody dying and they haven't told you everything that there is to, everything that there is to know. And the idea of like being in between a rock and a hard place when it comes to decision making, I think were all big ones.
Because this even lends itself to like what feels like another sort of like subtextual theme of your films, which is the idea of growing up. There are all kind of these movies where these young men
come of age.
Yes.
Yeah, coming of age is a big one. Yeah, like T'Challa. This movie is T'Challa's coming of age story, but it's also Wakanda's coming of age. But more so T'Challa's. Fruitvale was a story about a man who's not allowed to come of age. Like so many people you hear, but wants to. Yeah, so many people you hear. Like I'm 31 now, but I remember when I was 22, when Oscar was murdered. I hadn't been to Cannes yet. I hadn't even left the country yet. At that time, I didn't know who I was just yet. And I imagine like every day if somebody, murdered me when I was 22, or 19 and 17, in the way people talked about him after he was murdered. He was a 22-year-old man shot and killed, as if he had lived his whole life, as if he had done, and I know that people aren't done growing at it, just yet. I'm sorry about that, guys. Yeah, I'm not sure what to do about this.
Watch this. I'll just watch you on my phone.
Oh, man.
Like that. No, but that idea, that concept again, because it's Adonis has to do that. Yeah. It's the question that both Killmonger, I feel like we're in two different rooms, that Killmonger and T'Challa ask themselves. They're both asking themselves that, in addition to Wakanda, because that idea of being caught between two worlds, which is the African American you have to deal with all the time. Where do you live, here or there? And if you step in this world too much, do you leave too much of the world you came from behind? I mean, these are all things that you deal with all the time that all come from the way you grew up, don't they?
Absolutely. That idea of being between two worlds and feeling like you don't fit in.
Which is also The Godfather.
Yeah, for sure. And trying to find your place. I think those films, like watching those films again, they were about Michael trying to find his place. His father wanted him to be a politician. His father wanted him to go legit. His family wanted him to stay safe. So he did the exact opposite of that and went to war. And then he comes back and wants to contribute. And kind of has to find a way.
Yeah, I thought I was hearing something. You know what? This is.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to switch this to the side. See if this makes it any better.
Yeah.
Because they experiment on black people to do the first one of these things. We'll have it all fixed.
Oh, perfect.
By the time Chris Nolan comes in here, it's going to be on point, right?
Hello, is that better?
But yeah, I mean, I guess I'm wondering, we talked about this so many times, but how much of this is conscious for you? Because there's so many ideas in these films. And what's so exciting about Black Panther is to see an epic film from a black point of view. Because one of the things I was talking to a director friend of mine about is you can see the ease that black actors have when they're directed by another black person. It's just this sort of thing where, and as you put it, it's just stuff you don't have to explain. The questions that you don't have to answer.
Yeah. Maybe, yeah. But it was still. We were still running the cultural barriers that we'll make fun of, But in the moment, it's something that's like it could be concerning, for instance, because we have our cast was from all over the diaspora, and I have a certain way of speaking. Some people call it an accent, whatever. You know what I'm saying? But it's I can't change it. You feel me? So
sorry.
Oh, snap. No, okay, all good. It's better. Okay, smooth. Yeah, but I, so that was good.
I took ski experiment up here. Anyway, You were saying about the way you speak.
Yeah, so I got oh wow, yeah. So I have a way of speaking that's a certain way, you know, and you know, like Lupita grew up in you know, she's born in Mexico, grew up in Kenya, you know, Denai, you know, grew up in Zimbabwe, born in Idaho of all places, you know what I mean, but grew up in Zimbabwe. So I would often, it's like sometimes I would say stuff to Michael or Chad that they would get the first time. And I'll say that same thing to maybe Denai or Lupita, and they'd be like, yo, what? Like, no, like, Ryan, come back, what? Like, you know, what is that? What are you talking about right now? You know, and it'll be, you know, so it's one of those things where we were realizing, and you know, by the end of, you know, I would say around the middle of shooting, you know, by the time we got to our shooting our waterfall sequence, which was intense, you know, like everybody would pretend to talk like each other, you know what I mean? We would poke fun, like we would understand like different slang terms from different parts of the world, you know. It was really like it was really moving, you know. Like it feel like you were a part of something greater, you know. What
Creating
I mean?
a country.
Yeah, in a way. Yeah, in a way, for that little bit of time that we were shooting, you know. So that part of it was unexpected and really, you know, and really cool.
What was the first day of shooting? What was the first thing you shot on Black Panther? Do you remember?
I do, man. The first day, yeah, the first thing we shot was the kids playing basketball, and that was like and it was you know, because we shot a couple of scenes of kids playing basketball, so it was actually the first thing we shot and the last thing we shot. You know, but the first scene of the film, when you see the kids playing and you find out that it's young Killmonger later, was what we shot, and it was crazy because we had to shoot like plate footage in Oakland. You know, we shot plate footage and aerial footage in Oakland so it could match, but we were stationed in Atlanta. You know, so we cast the kids from Atlanta and we picked this location. We didn't really know why we were picking it, other than that we felt like it could make it look like Oakland the best, you know. And then we found out, like, when we got there, it was like, people were like, oh yeah, you know that church right there, that's where Martin Luther King is buried. He was like, what? You know, and then it was like, by the way, his daughter's here and she wants to say what's up to you guys. So it was like our first day shooting, and Bernice was like there, like shaking everybody's hand, like saying, I'll be hoping for the best. You know, it's cool that y'all, you know, chose to shoot this here. And I'm like, oh yeah, you know, but I didn't even know, you know, before, and it was moving, you know, like, and it was also ironic because we had to change what the building looked like, you know, so it could match in with Oakland. But we, you know, it's something that as filmmakers, we all know. You came to the shoot the first day and met, you know, Martin Luther King's daughter, you know, who looks just like him, you know, so it's crazy.
What was, I mean, you must have had a lot of moments like that. What was the most daunting moment after you got that call and you decided you want to make it? Because there's certain people who told you it was a bad idea to make this movie.
I'm not snitching on you, Elvis. You got to snitch on yourself.
And I just did.
Yeah. The most daunting moment, I think, was the most daunting. I mean, it was filled with daunting moments, man. Making a movie, you know, it's hard, man. Like, and every movie is hard. I remember in film school, we would shoot a movie for like one day, and I'd be like, oh, at the end of the day, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna die. Like my wife could tell you, you know. And when you make a film like this, it's multiple times like that. I would say, like, right around the time, like you say, like around the time you say yes, we're gonna do this thing, it's like crazy because you realize it's like, man, like, you know, either this thing is gonna work or it's not, and it's a good chance that my life will be different either way after this, you know. And I think, you know, my wife is real cool. She like made me go back to the comic book shop where I first found out what Black Panther was, you know, in Oakland. She was like, let's go back to the shop. So we went back to that same place, and then I bought a Panther book, you know, and that kind of like reminded me of like the awesomeness of it, you know what I'm saying? And you kind of have to keep reminding yourself that when it's getting heavy, when it's getting like, when the pressure feels like insurmountable or things are going wrong on set and you're running out of time, you know, you got to try to find that kid that if you could go back in time and tell him that you're gonna be directing Black Panther, would just like, the kid, my jaw would have hit the floor if I was told that. You know what I mean? Like my eyes would have just lit up. So you got to kind of find that in yourself to keep moving. That was pretty. Just saying yes was daunting, though, I think.
Oh, sure, it must have been. What was the first Black Panther story you read? Do you remember that?
I think it was a Don McGregor. Like
Jungle Action?
Yeah, it was like a collection.
That's right, we talked about that.
Yeah. It was probably like an old school one, because when I got shown it, it was like in a collection. Yeah, like because they weren't in print at the time. It was like the early mid-90s. It was in that little zone before Christopher Priest started his. I apologize, we're going on comic book tangents, but I
think they've heard of the movie, so it's okay.
How I discovered Black Panther was I was into comic books because of my big cousin. I was trying to be like my big cousin. He was like 7 years older than me. I didn't have a big brother and nothing like that. My big cousin I thought he was the coolest in the world. So I would like go over his house and like hang out, and he was like, "Man, get out of here," but I would read it. He would give me his comic books to read because I wanted to be just like him. And he had X-Men, he had all this cool stuff. So I got into comic books that way. We had a comic book shop right across the street from my elementary school. So I would go there in between school and basketball practice, And I was a nerd, so I would just walk over there, and they knew who I was. I wouldn't have any money, so I was just go in there and just read books till they kicked me out, or till it was time to go to basketball practice, And then I kind of got tired of reading comic books that were only about white people, And if it was a black person in it, they were like on the side or whatever, So I went in as a kid and was like, "Hey, is there any comic books that are about black people?" And then they was like, "Oh yeah, there's a Black Panther," So they showed me that. That's how I found out what it was.
And that's where Killmonger first started.
Yeah, Don McGregor wrote Killmonger. But in my book, I don't think he was fighting Killmonger in that book that I read first, though. But yeah, Don McGregor invented Killmonger.
Because you talk about, there's basketball, there's football. How do you make the transition from being an athlete to being a filmmaker?
How did it happen for me? I was on scholarship in undergrad, and I had to like a creative writing class. It was like mandatory. And I had a teacher read my first assignment, and she told me, you should look into writing screenplays. You should think about that. And that's kind of how I found myself, getting into it.
Were you a big movie kid up until that point?
I was. My mom loved movies. My dad liked movies too. My dad kind of liked sports movies and like Steven Seagal, Chuck Norris type. He loved movies where somebody was getting kicked in the face. You know what I mean? And he loved Rocky. He just loved Rocky. He would cry like every time Rocky came on. My mom actually had like extremely good taste. You know what I mean? Like she would my mom, and she's kind of like me. She got like mental issues. She can't fall asleep unless the TV is on. Like she got ADHD and all that. Before it was people were saying what it was. So she would always have a movie on. And my mom was like IMDb before there was IMDb. Like she could watch like an episode of ER, and she'd be like, so you see that doctor right there? That's the guy that was in this movie that came out in 1990, and be absolutely right.
He was in Coming to America. Yeah, she did Soul Glow for you. She did that.
Yeah, and she would watch movies. Like her and my dad, I'll never forget. Her and my dad went on a date to see The Fugitive, and I had to stay home with my brothers, and then and they came home. And my mom was so moved by the movie that she just told me the whole movie. She acted it out for me, like right there in the living. Like she's like jumping when the train, like jumping off the thing. She's like, oh, and then the train came, and then like as soon as it came on VHS, like she rented it, and then took it home. I think that might have been our first VHS we had,
Well, how'd you connect to The Fugitive? Because in some ways, it's everything you're doing. It's a family story. It's a lot of, I can see this kind of impact on you. It got big action sequences. Yeah.
I love it. It's my favorite Harrison Ford movie. I think, don't tell Feige, because he got a big Star Wars head. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's my favorite Harrison Ford movie for sure, I think. Just because of that connection with the parents.
But you're saying, though, about your mom, she just basically gave you this love of movies. What else did she tell you about? What else was she responsible for you seeing?
It was everything that she had access to. And we would watch the Twilight Zone marathon every year. And she would talk about why she loved each episode. Like me, her, and my dad would watch them in the house on the Sci-Fi Channel. That was the Sci-Fi Channel, right? That had them, yeah. so we would just we would talk about shit. But my mom's not a formal film person, though. You know what I'm saying? And we didn't watch foreign cinema or anything like that. I didn't discover that till I went to film school. Yeah, she would expose me to everything that she watched that she thought was really good, and a lot of gangster movies. Man, she watched the Untouchable. She would watch Goodfellas. She loved Marty's movies. So I watched all of that with my mom.
Wow, you saw, I can't believe this. Malcolm X when you were 6, and you watched gangster movies with your mother.
Yeah.
But talk about the first foreign language movies you see, because the first time you see a movie with subtitles, you kind of go, whoa, there's this kind of weird disconnect because you're not used to it.
Yeah, it was City of God. City of God was the first one. And what happened was, like, I'm trying to think how I found out about it. But we would watch like in my neighborhood when we grew up in high school, we would watch hood movies. You know what I'm saying? Like we was always trying to find like the next hood movie. Like
what? Which one? What did you see?
Man, we watched them all.
Come on now, let's hear.
I mean, all of them, man. Like all of the ones that came out in the '90s. Like we was big on Juice. Juice was a great one. But we watched. We watched them all, even like little local hood movies, and then we heard about City of God, and it was like supposed to be this epic gangster movie, but from Brazil, and then that was how I found it, and it just blew my mind, and that was like the first time I felt like I traveled while I watched the movie, like Juice felt like it took me to New York, or Paid in Full, it took me to New York. Or watching Spike stuff or Marty stuff took me to New York, but like City of God took me to another country, but where they had people who looked like me and talked like me and felt like me and my friends, So I was amazed by that, and I was kind of been hooked on foreign cinema ever since.
And who were some of the other foreign filmmakers who really like clicked for you? Who were some of those directors? Man,
I watch so many movies of his, man. I love so many of them, man. Like Jacques Audiard is a big one for me because I love them Prophet so much. I watched La Haine, which is a amazing one. Love that. I was big on like I had an Argentinian buddy. When I was in film school, who I would work with, and he put me on a lot of Latin American cinema. So he put me on like Y Tu Mamá También and Amores Perros, which I really dug. I love Amores Perros. Yeah, man. So it was. Those are a few of them. I love Joachim Trier, who I think Joachim's here, but I love his movies. He makes movies out of Oslo.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a lot. It's quite a few of them. Not to mention the ones from the classic ones. Yeah.
Because one of the things I noticed about your movies too, and a lot of these films that you're talking about have in common, is the way you use sound in movies. I mean, you could almost, I wouldn't suggest anybody do this, but you can almost just listen to the movies to get a sense of what's going on in them. I mean, the way you blend music in with, so it's like almost real time things happening. And the way you use music to communicate time even. Sound is really important to you, isn't it?
Absolutely. When I first went to film school, I was like, if you don't have a major in graduate school, but if I did, my major would have been sound design. Yeah. So I learned how to mix. I did a lot of recording, operating the boom. Yeah. So I really loved it. And you grow up listening. I always loved music. Music was kind of like my first love before anything. I used to ride around with my dad listening to Ice Cube tapes. Like we just rock them and flip them back and forth, and then flip it to the clean version when my mom got in the car, But no, I love it, man, and it's something that's extremely important to me, and a lot of filmmakers that I would watch, treat sound in really revolutionary ways. You think about how Marty. Treats using all, like how he used an all Stone song with a montage, and you look at how Aronofsky would use sound,
music
in his amazing ways. So I was always try to use that tool,
So I was just watching Black Panther again to get ready for this, just the way you use sound to sort of bring us into that world as the camera's coming to Wakanda for the first time, and the sound just really starts to fill up the entire theater.
Yeah, it was a big deal. Like we wanted to make this film. We wanted the film to be an African film, but African in all ways, not just the continent, but the diaspora. And we wanted it to feel, Wakanda is a place that's ancient and new. It's Afrofuturism. So you got to bring the past to the present to the future. It's got to be timeless in a certain way. So that was something that I talked to with all of my collaborators on the film to really try to get that. To really get that in every piece of music that we had, and to make commentary on those crossovers, so we were able to, and also for it to involve people from all over the diaspora, It's funny that Abel's here. It's something that we would talk about, big time with the songs that he was able to do for the film, which is, having it feel futuristic, but he put some chants in Amharic, and it's actually like his mom and him chanting together in Amharic, which is, the native language in Ethiopia, where his people from. So we blended all of that in, and we wanted all of those elements there, at all times, and hopefully the music could tell a good story as well.
There's so much of that, because I was thinking about the way the body blow sound in Creed, because you actually showed it to me earlier, and we talked about even then, but you want to make it sound like a fight. So that's what I mean by you actually listen to it, and it sounds like the way, if you've ever been to it, it sounds like an actual fight.
Yeah, that was something we talked about, how we talk to boxers and they would say how they can tell if they hurt a guy by how it sounded. You know what I mean? And they listening to the fight as much as they are watching the other fighter. So that was something we tried to bring in, the fact that body blows, should sound different from a chin or from a cheekbone, from the top of the head. And just doing those layers, man, and losing yourself in it a bit, and hoping that it registers with the audience, man. Like with sound, a lot of times it registers on the subconscious level.
But for you, it's like every aspect of the film tells a story. The sound tells a story. The music tells a story, too. It's like for you, all these things are kind of these intersecting narratives, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. You try to use every piece you have, for us, it's just tools to affect the audience, and we want every tool to be as sharp as possible and to have as much thought going into it, in terms of the themes and everything that you need, and hope, cross your fingers that it affects somebody,
No, because if you're thinking about it in that way, the way sound works in movies, and it's happened so often in independent films, you don't hear that sophistication in sound. And I just remember how sophisticated all that noise was, that last scene on the platform in Fruitvale, how much stuff is going on even in that.
Yeah, we tried to look at it on a dynamic range, for music and for sound, and try to plot it out with the script. Like what moments would be the most quiet, what moments would be the loudest, and how would those contrast. And that idea of just the chaos of it, and that's one of the things that I remember, like when I first saw the tape, when I first saw the footage, was just how loud it was, just how loud it was, and then how that gun went off and everybody just stopped, and that idea of, that idea of chaos, and how scary those situations can be, So we wanted to capture that. We wanted to make the audience kind of feel like that, feel like they're in that. And that's something that you learn in school too. Like at USC, they'll teach you. They got a big sound department, but they say look, people will forgive everything else but bad sound. Like you can have shaky camera work. You know what I mean? Your editing could be mismatched, but as long as your sound is smooth, people will give you a shot. You know what I mean? But as soon as your sound is off, the audience will throw the talent on you. So that's something that I always try to remember. No, because
one of the things I asked you about too is, what was your first meeting like with Forrest Whitaker?
Oh wow. Wow. Yeah, the first time I met Forrest, I was still in film school, and I was finishing up. I was in my last year of graduate school, and somebody asked me if I liked Forrest Whitaker. A teacher did. Hey, do you like Forrest Whitaker? And I was like, of course I like Forrest Whitaker. And they were like, well, it's a woman that's running his production company, and she reached out looking for filmmakers to meet. So that was how I got in contact with him. I met with this woman named Nina Yang first, who became the producer of Fruitvale. Met with Nina first, and met with her a couple times, and then she was like, "Man, I want you to bring, I really like talking with you. I want you to think about maybe 3 movies that you would want to make, and come in, and I'm gonna bring you in, and you can pitch all 3 of them in front of Forrest, So then I was like, okay, you know, so then I didn't think he would show up, you know. But I came to school. I think I had a tie on or something, you know. I figured if I dressed nice, he wouldn't notice how inexperienced I was, you know. So I'm at school. People like, man, why you have a tie on? Like, I got a meeting, you know. So I got to meet with him, and I remember he was dressed like, I just remember he was dressed like super casual, you know. So I was the only idiot in there with a tie on, you know. And I'm just kind of telling him about all these ideas, and I'm like super nervous. And then I get to Fruitville, and I'm like, this is the one, you know, that I would make, you know, regardless. You know, this is what I want to make. You know, whether you say you want to make something with me or not, this is the one I'm going to go off and make, and it's the one I'm feeling in my heart. And as I was telling him about it, I got less nervous. You know, and he was like, I don't know why you told me about that other stuff. You know, this the one. You know, this the one I want to make with you. So he kind of like just greenlit it right there in the room, or so he said. You know what I'm saying? So I didn't even know what that meant at the time. So he was like, cool, let's make it. You know, and then he walks out, and then Nina starts jumping up and down. So then I'm like, man, what's happening right now? She's like, no, we're gonna make it. We're gonna make this movie. It's so exciting. So I'm like, I'm thinking it's a joke. You know what I'm saying? I just left class, and I think I had to go back to class. You know. So then I went back to class. I called my wife. I called a couple of my friends, and they was like, man, you know, you gotta hurry up before he changes his mind. So I went home that night and tried to like outline the whole thing. Stayed up all night, tried to outline the whole thing, sent that to Nina, and I'm like, yo, we still making this, right? We still on. And she's like, yeah, no, of course. Like, you know, he's not the type of person to just change his mind overnight, you know. And I'm still like, I don't know him, you know, so I'm still super nervous. But that was like my first meeting. Was like, obviously he didn't change his mind. We made the movie. Yeah.
And of course, your first meeting with Mike.
Wow. My first meeting with Mike, this was for the same project. Obviously, it was for Fruitville, and I knew that I wanted him for the film.
You always knew you wanted him.
Not always. Like I knew we needed somebody for the role. So then I started to research like who was out there, and in that research, I went to, you know, I started to rewatch The Wire. Like I think he had some movies in the theaters at the time. I think Red Tails and Chronicle, I think, were both in the theater at the time. So I went to, you know, watch all those movies, and I was like, yeah, this is the guy. You know, so after that, you know, I was when I started to just really kind of see him as Oscar. Went to Sundance, came back, and then Nina set up a meeting with me and him. We met like somewhere in Burbank, I think, at a Starbucks, and just sat and talked, and then we kind of hit it off. He seemed like, you know, very similar to you know, he grew up in Newark. Newark is similar to Oakland, where I'm from. You know, we had a lot in common. So from there, I was just kind of fingers crossed, hoping that he would like the script. You know, so gave him the script, and he texted me back and said he wanted to do it.
And then when you were doing Creed, did you know you wanted him from the outset for that as well?
Yeah, that's complicated because Creed. So Creed, I came up with the idea for Creed while my dad was sick, and my dad had been sick for a while. So I knew I wanted to make Creed. You know, kind of even before Fruitville got going.
Was it something you talked to your dad about, that you were going to do this movie?
Nah, I didn't tell him about it just yet. You know, but it was something I was kind of keeping to myself. Then while I was writing Creed, he got really, really, really sick. You know. And that was when I was like, yo, I gotta make this before, you know, because I thought we were gonna lose him, you know. So I was like, I gotta figure out a way to get this idea in front of Stallone before he passes away. So it was something that was always around. And so while we were prepping Fruitville, I would talk to Mike about it, you know. And then while we were basically scouting, getting ready to shoot Fruitville, I got my first meeting with Stallone, you know. So I had to fly down and meet with him and pitch him on the idea. He said no, but I had to pitch him on the idea, you know, like while we were actually prepping Fruitville.
And what happens the second time you see him after he says no the first time?
I mean, I had a movie the second time. Like, we finished Fruitville, and it you know, it came out, and then after that, I was like, yo, can we, you know, would you reconsider, you know? And he was like, yeah, I'm down to do it. But it was first. I didn't have a movie. I didn't have anything. Like, I was just meeting him, and I had an idea, you know, so it didn't go far. I don't blame him for saying no, you know.
But then you said too, I mean, at what point does Mike come into that idea?
I told Mike about it, like while we were making Fruitvale.
Did you say, I'm going to want you to do this, or you just talking?
I was just talking, and I wanted to see if he was interested in it, you know. And then he was like, I'll be open to it, you know. So then by the time that Creed came about, we were closer. We had finished the movie, you know what I mean? And he was like, I gotta be in that at that point. And I thought he was right for it as well.
And then for Panther.
Panther was different. Like for Panther, so like with Panther, I inherited Chadwick Boseman, who was the lead actor in that film. He had already played in the Russo brothers film, Civil War. So he was already there, you know. So the Black Panther was cast, and Chad's a really great actor, you know, very different from Mike, you know. So in developing the script, I knew I wanted to have an antagonist that could kind of go toe-to-toe with him. And as we came up with the idea of who Killmonger was, you know, then it made sense that it should be Mike. So that's kind of when I went to him and asked if he would be willing to be in the film.
We can't sit here and not talk about the way you cast women in your film. I mean, just right down to those two incredibly strong women, the mother and the girlfriend in Fruitvale.
Yeah, for Fruitvale, you know, I was trying to make a film that was paying true homage to Oscar's life, and that was what it was. You know, if you meet his mom, if you meet Sofina, who was his girlfriend at the time, you know, that's what they are. You know, they're very, very, very strong women and tried to capture that. In a macro sense, that's kind of what, you know, the community is, the Black community. You find these incredibly strong, layered, you know, women, you know, smart, you know, and a lot of times head of households, you know. But a lot of times they're head of household, you know, and so, you know, we went to and that's kind of like the world that I come from, you know. The women in my life, the women in my family are really amazing. So, you know, want to make films that capture that.
But then the women are as important, and that's the thing that makes Black Panther so extraordinary. One of the many things, the women are as important to the defense of Wakanda, to the story, to the emotional life of T'Challa and Wakanda, as the men. Yeah,
I mean that's there in the comic books. You got the Dora Milaje who like protect the king, and this all female guard. And I think it's true of African society as well. And Wakanda is kind of like a what we could be, you know, idea, you know. Some people call it a utopia. Some people call it like a dream state, dream world, you know, or something to shoot for. But the idea in Wakanda is that like everybody is allowed to have their fullest potential realized. You know what I'm saying? Like they try to maximize everybody's potential because they're all they have inside this tiny country. They can't afford to have other Wakandans that they repress in any way. You know, just in a logical sense of what they have to do, and so I thought that was just like a beautiful idea. You know, and I thought it would be great for us in a comic book movie to have, you know, because a lot of times in comic books it's kind of like a little bit of tokenism. You know, you got one Black person, you got one woman that fights. You know, so for us it's like, oh, we got these books where it's like maybe 4 or 5 of these women, you know, that are all different, that all do different things, that are different ages. You know what I mean? And for that was really exciting. I was fired up about that, and you know, didn't want to blow that opportunity.
But there's something about seeing Black Panther that's like, for a person of color, it's like the first time you go to Africa. You go, wow. Because the first time I went to Africa, I was in line just talking to the customs guy for 20 minutes. He just went, I'm sorry, you have to go because there are people behind you.
You're so excited.
But you know what I'm talking about, don't you?
Oh yeah, man. I mean, the film was about that for me. You know, I got to travel to the continent because of the movie. That was my first time going. You know, and it was a place that I wanted to go my whole life. You know,
where'd you go first?
I went to South Africa first. And I went there because in the film that I saw, Civil War, where Chadwick is already playing, and he talks to his father, who's this very famous South African actor named John Kani, yeah. And they use the language Xhosa, which is a South African language. Yeah, and so I went to South Africa because that's where the Xhosa people are. You know, I went to study that, you know, that culture. And so I went there first. I went to Cape Town, then Joburg, And then I went to a country called Lesotho, which provided a lot of inspiration for some of the things we saw in Wakanda. Lesotho is an enclave inside of South Africa that escaped colonization for a while. And then I went to Kenya, spent time with one of my actresses' families, Lupita Nyong'o. Spent time with Lupita's family in Kenya. And I was going to try to go back to West Africa after that, but I got a little sick, so I had to come back home.
What was you've talked about this in interviews, but talk about that first time when you asked the guy from your hotel to sort of take you around. You ended up going to drink. Oh
man, yeah. So I was kind of on my own in Cape Town, and I was in the. How many people have been to Cape Town? Has anybody been? Oh, you from Cape Town? That's what's up. Okay, yeah. So it's a really interesting place. But I was in these Disney approved hotels. You know what I mean? So it was, it kind of felt like I was still in San Francisco or something, you know. But like the people who were working there, you know, like they seemed like my kind of people, you know what I mean? Like I ended up hanging out with the people that was like loading bags and like, you know, the bellmen and everything, and the people who worked in the kitchen. And so it was a guy named Bonga who was working as a bellman. Me and him ended up hanging out like the first couple of days I was there, and then he eventually invited me to come back to hang out with him and his family. And they were in a township called Guguletu. So that was where I spent a lot of my time in South Africa, was with Bonga and his family in Guguletu. And the experience of that was amazing for me, because I kind of found out that a lot of the things that they do, they call them rituals, they call them all these different things, you know, that sound like unfamiliar to me, but they do like the exact same things that my family does, you know, in the States. You know, like the way that they would treat each other, the way that they're you know, they had a ritual that I attended, and they called it a ritual, but it looked at me like a house party. That's what I would call it, you know, like, but it was like, you know, it was like kids and the young people in the front of the house, and you know, when you go inside, the women were cooking, you know, and they were you know, cooking and talking, you know, and the older women were kind of like running the show, and the younger women were kind of their apprentices, you know what I mean? But they were talking and having a good time, and then and then you go outside, and the older men were in the back preparing the meat, you know, and drinking, you know, and passing around the drink in a certain way. But I'm like,
tell me about the way they passed around the drink.
So they passed the drink around. Everybody would drink from the same drink, you know, and it was this African beer. I forget the name of it. Oh yeah, why? So wait, are you outside? Yeah. Oh wow, that's amazing. Yeah, so it was an outside ritual, and they were passing this beer around. I don't want to mispronounce it. What is it? Marty. Marty. Yeah, so they were passing this beer around, but I'm like, we passed the bottle around the same way. You know what I mean? Right? It's not a beer bottle. It's a bottle of Hennessy usually, but we pass it around, and you know what I mean. And we. And I'm like, yo, it was blowing my mind, because if you come to my house for a house party, you know, it's the same thing. Like the young folks in the front, you know what I mean? The women are in the kitchen. You go out in the back, the OGs in the back cooking
the ribs,
you know what I mean? Passing it. I'm like, oh, this is like an African thing that we've been doing this whole time. You know, I thought it was something that we invented like in the States, you know. But it's like, it's connected to the continent. Like, you know what I mean? So and it just really changed my whole view of things. It wasn't just that experience. It was so many other ones. Like I constantly would go around, and I was like, man, I'm gonna try something. I'm gonna just not talk, cause how I looked and how I dressed matched with everybody else in the township. So I'm gonna just close my mouth and see what happens. And people would come up to me and speak to me in different languages. You know what I mean? People would think I was Zulu. You know, they would think I was Xhosa. You know, they would think I was Sotho. Like until I started to talk, then I realized, oh yeah, you're not from here. You know, you're from somewhere very far.
It's the accent. That's what gave you away.
But I was like, oh, it's nothing about how I look. You know, I would constantly see people that look like my friends, you know, or my aunties or my cousins, you know. So it made me feel like a sense of connectedness and a sense of ownership over the continent. And it happened everywhere that I went, you know. It happened all over the continent. It felt like that, you know.
See, that's the thing I really love so much about the movie. There's that really subtle excitement about that. It's your excitement about bringing that to the screen, but it's also the excitement of seeing all these actors of color. There's kind of excitement that happens when people get to work with people who like them and have an experience like this that, you know, God willing, you get to do a Black Panther too, which we talk about later. But But that's the thing that there's something exhilarating about this movie in a way that you hadn't got to do before. It's almost like that moment in a musical before people start dancing, that excitement you get. I mean, even going to Wakanda, there's that whole kind of feeling. Were you consciously trying to do that kind of thing? Because it really is there.
I mean, I was trying to capture the feeling that I had when I went to the continent for the first time, for sure. You know, because we're going to Wakanda for the first time as an audience, you know, and we wanted to try to capture that, and this idea of there's the excitement around a place that escaped colonization, because there's nowhere on the continent that did, you know, and so that's something that everybody I think could participate in. You know, I kind of learned that as I got older, you know, but I thought that. Wow, like if we can go through this barrier, you know what I mean, and you see this place that hasn't been, you know, that hasn't been touched by this thing, you know, what would that feel like, you know? So that was, you know, that was kind of what we were aiming at. I didn't know if it would resonate or not, you know.
I think it does it not? Do you feel that excitement when you get there for the first time? But again, we just want to get back to the women, because again, you could have elected not to do that version, because you've done the Don McGregor version, with the exception of Monica Lynn. The women aren't that important to it, but you chose to exercise that idea that women are as important to the society as the men.
I think that you could argue that they're more important, you know, in Wakanda, like, oh.
I guess they would agree.
But it's a whole, you know, it's a whole section of the film. I hope I'm not spoiling it for anybody, but it's a whole, it's a whole section of the film where, you know, where T'Challa's out of the movie, you know, and you just following the women, and that's one of my favorite parts of the movie, you know, like when I would watch it, you know, and I didn't expect that, you know, but he goes out, and then it's like, you know, he goes over a cliff, obviously, you know, and everybody thinks he's.
Well, now I'm not going to see it. Thank you for that.
Yeah, everybody thinks he's dead, and then it's like, you know, it's a good chunk of time left in the movie, and the women actually save him, you know, bring him back, and that part of the movie is just like, you feel like you're watching something fresh and new, like I did the first time that I looked at it, you know, and that part of it was exciting. We have these actresses who could easily carry their own movie, you know. Some of them have before, you know. You got like, you know, we had the Embarrassment of Riches. You had Lupita, you had Danai, you had Letitia, you know, you had Angela. You know, and we were so fortunate. So like when that part of the movie happens, it's like, oh man, this, you know, I would watch this movie. You know, I would watch a movie with just them. You know,
is that something you would do? Would you make a movie with just them at some point?
With those four?
I mean, man, that story. I mean, in set in Wakanda.
Oh man, I mean, that'd be amazing. You know, if the opportunity came up. I mean, I think that, you know, they did it in the comic book version. Like Ta-Nehisi Coates' work in the comic is amazing, and then Roxanne Gay did a run called War of Wakanda, and it was basically it was that slant. Like let's let the women drive the story and look at it from that perspective, you know. And in the film, how we introduce Wakanda, like the first true blue Wakandans that you see are the Thor. You know what I mean? Like, you know, they kind of precede the king. You know, that kind of our introduction is like, oh, you know, this isn't what you think this is. You know, so I just think that it's powerful and it's unique. And I hope to see, more films like it, not just in African cinema, but all over.
Yeah, I mean, I guess something else that comes to mind for me too, and I know we even talked about this before you went to make the movie, you know, a bunch of times, is in American film, whenever a black film is successful, it's like the equivalent of finding $100 in the street. It's like this non-repeatable phenomenon. It can never happen again. God knows how that happened. You can't do it again. Can't do it twice. You have proven that this is something that can be done.
Oh, I mean, I think, yeah. Look, man, it's a. At the end of the day, it's a business, right? Like, and the business is informed by all of these things that life is informed by. You know, colonization, institutional, racism. Bias and racism. All these things. The business was built. Amongst all of these things, right? You know what I'm saying?
Also, it's like, black films don't travel internationally.
Oh man, like all these things. But the truth is, like, what I kept telling myself, because I'm an athlete, I was an athlete. I'm not anymore, Jesus Christ, but I was. There was a time. now I'm like, man, can I make it up that ramp without falling? Like, but but you know, there was a time like not that long ago. I don't know about it, but my dad would tell me like there was a time when owners of American baseball teams would say, "Hey, I don't know if we put like Black and Hispanic players out on the field, will people still come to the games?" There was a time in basketball where there were no black people in the NBA, and
That's why they were the Harlem Globetrotters.
Yeah, like and it was because people thought that people wouldn't come to the games. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I grew up you know, I was born in '86, came up in the '90s. I turn on the TV, I think of the NBA, everybody's black. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, and everybody in the stands is usually a mixed bag, mostly white, but they got on the black players' jerseys. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's the world I grew up in. You know, so for me it was like, man, why can't film have more black movies? You know what I mean? Like, I guess, you know, people say that, you know, maybe these films won't travel, but for us it was an issue of, man, like we don't know if that's the case, you know, and it was great to have partners in Marvel who are excited about that, and Disney who are excited about that as well. You know, that was we didn't feel like we were like the only ones banging the drum, you know what I mean, in the office meetings and stuff, you know.
But are you worried that, because some people try to rationalize this and they'll go, well, oh, it's from the guy who made Creed, and it's a Marvel property, and it's Disney. And they'll try to come any number of reasons to say that this is a one-off.
How do you rationalize Jordan? How do you rationalize Get Out?
You have to rationalize.
I'm just wondering, like, you know,
But you know what I'm talking about, because you have changed the way movies travel, but you haven't changed the people who make the decisions, who've been making these decisions.
Right.
And more, just as important as the production people is the exhibition people and the distributors who go, yeah, you know, people aren't going to go see these movies because they don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I just hope that changes, man. It's got to change. Like, I think at the end of the day, like, you know, I've heard Fincher talk about film. He'll say like, film is fashion. You know what I mean? Like, people are going. Nobody really knows what works, so people are going to chase what has worked before it. You know. So I mean, I hope that we can lead I hope that me and you can lead a business in a better way that we found it. You know what I'm saying? It's like, I hope it for everybody. You know. But I like to think that it'll be more opportunities.
Because so many of the films you're talking about that you love are these films that broke the mold. I mean, before The Godfather, nobody thought there could be a serious gangster movie.
Man, when I hear that, it's crazy to me because I grew up after The Godfather. You know what I mean? But yeah, like I read about, you know, I've actually talked to Francis about that.
I'll tell you about how many bad reviews he got.
Man, yeah. Like he kind of said that people thought he was making this genre film. That was kind of what the deal was, you know, because it hadn't really, what he was doing hadn't truly been done before. But that's what's so amazing and exciting about it, you know.
Yeah, like the time they went to cast Ryan O'Neal as Michael.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, but all these films that you love have been these films that have broken the mold. And being inside the business, why do you think there's still so much fear, especially when it comes to movies about people of color? Because look at it this way, Abel sitting here. What is the most influential form of mass communication across the United States in the past 50 years? Hip-hop. It's in the way people, it's everybody's slang, 24/7. I mean, all these things that people say, they don't know where it came from, all came from hip-hop. You look at that as the example of how black culture has changed the world.
Yeah.
Why do you think it's so hard for people in film to see that black culture is leading the way in so many manners?
I don't know. I mean, I'm from Oakland, so I mean, you know, black culture was everything where I'm from. You know, so like, I think that it's ideas that can get crystallized in people's heads because it hasn't been done yet. You know, and if you're telling your own self this, you know, a story, you know what I mean, and you don't have proof of otherwise. You know, and then you start to believe that story that you've told yourself is the truth. You know, this idea that black films can't travel, or, you know, nobody will want to see a film about a bunch of Africans. You know what I mean? I don't care how many spaceships or stuff's blowing up in it. You know what I mean? Like that idea. It can become truth if you don't have anything that doesn't disprove it. You know, but I think we just gotta keep making stuff, man, and keep challenging ourselves to make stuff, you know. And I didn't make this movie on my own, you know what I'm saying? Like when I say on my own, like obviously I had amazing artists that came together on the crew, man, like amazing actors, you know, really smart people in the office, you know what I mean? An amazing co-writer in Joe Robert Cole, you know, I had a fleet of people helping me, but but also I had a community of other filmmakers who were inspiring me the whole time. I had Ava, I had Barry, I had Jordan, people making stuff that's inspiring me. Donald, every time I turn on the TV and watch Atlanta, my mind is being stretched and inspired in terms of what we as a people and as artists can do. Listening to Abel and Kendrick's music, you know what I mean, and just seeing how they constantly challenging how I'm thinking and constantly making me feel emotions, but through different ways, and telling our story, you know what I mean, like in different sides of it, So I think that staying tapped into this community has also helped. I feel like we kind of our own answer, you know what I mean?
Well, talk about getting Kendrick involved with this.
Yeah, getting Kendrick involved, like he was somebody who I had met through Charles King and through Top Dog, who's his Anthony Tiffith. He runs the TDE label. So I had met them, I want to say in 2015, and it was kind of like a general meeting, and
Were you pitching Top on something, or just
No, we were just getting together, like Ludwig and I, my composer. We always had this kind of fantasy of, making a mixtape that'll go along with our movies. You know what I mean? And it was always something.
Did you do that?
Well, I mean, to me, that's what the Black Panther soundtrack is, But we never could do it for Fruitvale. We couldn't get it together. For Creed, we couldn't really get it together. We were able to get a song with Future for Creed.
Yeah.
And my brother did a couple songs, but we couldn't get it together how we wanted to. So when we met with when I met with Kendrick and Top, that was something I told him. I said, look, man, the next time I make something, I love it. I got this idea of like putting music together on this, that could address some of the themes of the film, but at the same time be its own thing, And then when it was time for Panther to come back around, Top and those guys reached out, got in touch with Abel, and we were able to put together that soundtrack, which I'm incredibly proud of, man. Really happy that was able to work out. And it's crazy because now I get in me and Zenzi, we hop in lifts all the time, and we back home in the Bay. And every time we get in, either Abel's song or Kendrick's song is on, or the SOB RBE song. It's like it's really intense.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I have to ask you too, because you said Chad was on the movie before you were. Mm-hmm. So what was that first conversation like?
Well, the first conversation with Chadwick was crazy because I was still doing press on Creed. Creed had just come out. I was still doing press on it, but nobody knew that I was doing Panther at the time. It hadn't broke yet, or that I was in talks for it. So how it worked out, I was in LA for a day. Chad was in LA, but I was doing a press junket. So it was press like crawling all over the hotel I was in. They were on every floor, and then Chad had to like sneak past the press to get into my room, so then we could meet each other. Cause like he was afraid that if somebody saw him at the thing, they might think something, So like he did like some kind of Jedi Black Panther ninja move, and like the next thing I know, he was like knocking on my door, So he came in and we sat down and talked, and I was really impressed by him,
What did he say he wanted his version of T'Challa to be? What did he say?
Well, he had already had a chance to play him in Civil War.
But in talking to you, what did he say to you?
I mean, he just talked about how a lot of the decisions that he had made already, like the idea of making sure that he had an African accent, the idea of speaking in an African dialect, in the film. Those were big choices that he had to make and stand by, and just talking to him about how he came to those choices, was truly amazing, and it just Chad was an odd dude, and then I think Chad might be like 40, 41, yeah, and he doesn't look it, at all, but it's like crazy wisdom there, you know what I'm saying? He got the wisdom of like a 60-year-old, you know what I'm saying? So it's like a lot of contrast. It's like a lot of contrast there. He feels like this. Like this 60-year-old in like a 25-year-old's body, you know what I mean?
That's what they say about me too, so.
Yeah, I was just saying that about you to somebody.
No, you weren't. Yeah. Anyway. But you see, meeting Chad, so, because he already had a take, and I was wondering what you said to him to go along with his take, because it's this thing where he walks in and he checks the room out. I mean, he's does things that very, like you can sort of say, he's almost using that Panther-like sense when he's going into the room.
Yeah. I mean, that's all Chad. You know what I mean? Like that internal work that he's doing. That's all Chad. Like, and it's a conscious thing. Like it's decisions that he's made before. He's extremely knowledgeable. Like for me, the idea of this film was about it being a coming of age. You know what I mean? And about this film being about him learning the rule and him learning what it means to be king. And then as we got further into the script, we realized that the film was really about a man who had this idealized version of his father, this idealized version of his country in his head, and then having that completely broken, and then picking up the pieces and having to make something new, and that was something that he was extremely interested in, and it was fun for us to get to work on it, and also to see him work with Mike.
But that idea of rebirth is really central to this. He has to literally die to become who he is.
Yeah. And a big theme in the film was this theme of
death. Like the idea of death, or death is really central to a lot of the work you do. I mean, there's the death of Adonis's father. I mean, there's what happens to Oscar. There's the death of T'Challa's father, and maybe the death of his country. I mean, this idea of impending death.
It's a real thing. Like it's something that, it's something that exists inside of. It's something that exists inside of me as a person and inside of us culturally. I think, like specifically as African American males.
Well, it's locks. I mean, is that very beginning of locks, which I think about so often.
Because your hair. Yeah. I think it's something that like death is constantly around us. Like it's a line. It's a line in the film that Joe Robert Cole wrote. It's beautiful. He says that when young Killmonger tells his father everybody dies, it's just life around here. But that idea that we surrounded by death, where we from, to the point that we're comfortable with it, like to the point that I couldn't see myself. Like when I turned 30, I almost had like a crisis because I never imagined myself being that age. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like I never saw it. Like I couldn't really see it.
But it's something as a young man of color. I mean, you hear this, a number of black men who die before they're 25.
25, yeah, 25, like the magic number. Yeah, that you either dead or in jail by that time. So and you see evidence of it. You know what I mean? Like I saw a lot of evidence of that. I saw a lot of people, good people who didn't make it past that age. Whether they went to prison or whether they were murdered, Oscar is an example of that, and so like death is kind of around you, all of the time, and you kind of deal with what I realized in this is that the idea like the transatlantic slave trade represented like a type of death for us, if that makes sense.
No, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, like it was kind of like the death of who we were. Like we can never. We kind of taught that we can never be who we were then. You know what I mean? We kind of that died, and then who we are now was born when they strapped chains on our ancestors. You know what I'm saying? That's kind of like the idea of the ideas that we come up with. Whether it's explicit or implicit. And for me, the film was about. Acknowledging that, but at the same time reclaiming that extended history as well, I
mean, because there is that difference between Killmonger and T'Challa. I mean, because T'Challa at least has the gift of being raised in a place where he's not only a prince and king, but surrounded by people who are like him, who want him to succeed, who want their country to succeed.
Yeah.
And
it's an amazing gift, yeah, and it's a character like we've never seen before. That's what makes actually T'Challa is a more unique character than Killmonger is in many ways because he's a black man who was unaffected by colonization. When you first meet him, colonization hasn't touched his life, and I had never seen a black character like that in a movie, I never heard about a black character like that in history, you know what I mean? So that in many ways made him.
Yeah, but no fear of colonization.
No fear of it.
Not only no colonization, but it's not even a possibility.
It's not something that can affect him. Yeah, even at the end of the film, like he's not worried about colonization. So that idea was something that was like, oh wow, this is like a very strange character. And Chad and I would talk about that, and that's the fundamental difference between him and between him and Killmonger. Like, you know, he's not affected by it. Killmonger he's a complete product of it. You know, that's all he knows. You know what I mean? So, you know, it was about getting those characters to butt up against each other and have conversations. You know what I mean? Like some of the conversations, you know, were some of the more important conversations in the film.
But also the idea of, I mean, you talking about T'Challa being an alien, but to him, Killmonger is an alien because you can see the way he looks at Mike. Sometimes he's just like, I literally don't get you. You don't make any sense to me. And the idea of making Killmonger not a villain. I mean, that must have been something you said to Mike. You're not the villain of this piece.
Right. No, for sure. Like I would never tell somebody they're the villain in a movie. You know what I'm saying? Even if it was, you know, even if it's like
Goldmember.
Goldmember. I guess you got to tell Goldmember he's the villain. Yeah. But I think that in this, you know, they tell you that the villain is the hero of his own story, but in many ways, like, you know, you could make a movie about Killmonger. You know, like he's a lot like Batman. You know what I'm saying? He's like a poor version of Batman. Like, you know, instead of having a lot of money, he don't have no money. But like his parents die, he trains. Like he, you know, goes about a way of making himself a weapon. And then and
he has no fear.
Nah.
No fear of death.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really kind of the difference between him and T'Challa, actually, because
Yeah.
T'Challa has a future.
Yeah, because he's raised in a place where he's always told that he's gonna die young. So for him, he's not afraid of it. He's ready to. You know, he embraces it. You know, which is sad. I think. You know,
Incredibly sad, but I mean, that's the exciting thing about this movie is that it's this fictional culture and this very real culture, but the tensions that exist because T'Challa is the black man, the African, and so many of us want to be or want to see.
Or wish existed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Killmonger is the black man that we all know.
Right. Absolutely. You know, and it's like that's the thing I stress, like that T'Challa is a black man that does not exist anymore. You know what I mean? Like, you know, because colonization affected, you know, every black person that still lives today is touched. You know.
But in that first scene when you introduce Eric at that museum, and he's basically, whether he takes the hoodie off, I thought about Locks actually in that scene. But for a second, tell them what Locks is, your first film.
Oh, so Locks is one of my first short films. It's a short film that I did at USC when I was in graduate school. We shot it on 16 millimeter film. It's got no dialogue in it, but it's about a young man from Oakland who takes a walk through his neighborhood to a barbershop and cuts his dreads off. And you know, and at the end of the film, you realize why he's doing it. But on that walk, you kind of see the whole neighborhood. And at the time when I made it, everybody in my neighborhood had dreads. You know, like I had dreads down to like my butt at the time. Yeah, they was long as yours, Elvis. Maybe they wasn't like yours though.
Yeah, they were black. I know. I got you.
I didn't say that.
You didn't have to. Anyway. But part of the thing about locks, too, is that we see the way black men with locks are being encountered on the street. I mean, it's this kind of interesting, this sort of philosophical suspense story.
Well, it was a real thing. Like everybody had that hair, so it became a trend thing, and it also became a thing that was kind of notorious. So like if you saw like a 22-year-old man killed, you know, on this corner, and they show his picture, he had dreads, you know what I'm saying? Or if it was a crime that happened, they would describe the people as having dreads, you know, so it was a thing that had a stigma attached to it, you know, but it was also something that if I went somewhere at that time, people would know I was from the Bay Area, you know, just from my hair, and it was something that we would dance a certain way, and our hair would move a certain way, you know what I mean? And it was a great sense of pride for us as well, you know, and it made an industry. You know what I mean? Like around hair care that only other African Americans could be a part of. You know what I mean? Like you couldn't just go anywhere to get your dreads done. You know what I'm saying? You had to go to a black person to get your dreads done. You know, specifically usually a black woman. You know what I'm saying? So you sitting there with somebody's auntie. You know what I'm saying? On that, you know, twisting your hair up. It became a ritualistic kind of thing. You know, but it got to a point where people started cutting them off. You know what I mean? Because the police stopped you less if you didn't have them. You know what I mean? It was a less chance of a mistaken identity. So that's what the film was. That's what the film was about. You know, and Killmonger got the new version of dreads now, like the dread fade that you see a lot of cats rocking. But that's in the film. When
it's like you were like quoting that. I mean,
yeah, a little bit.
There's a callback to that moment. But again, that's him taking it off and saying, you know what? I know people are afraid of me. You know, I'm not, and T'Challa had never lived in a world where he walks into a room when people are afraid of him. Again,
Nah.
it's such a beautiful, subtle thing that it almost made me cry when I saw it. So I thought, man, it's one of these things where, here's what art does. I mean, everybody sees something else, but, you know, we see something ourselves in it. For me to see something that specific in the movie, a big budget movie from a studio coming from a comic book company with a character created by two white guys was, to me, the defining moment of the 21st century.
Oh, man. That's a lot of weight. Thank you, though.
But, you know, I mean, the idea of being able to put all these ideas in the movie, I never thought you'd get a chance to do it. I never thought he'd listen to you. I thought, unless you put like an Iron Man helmet on, that he's not a villain. Or he's got to like wear the cowl and hood all the time so you can't see he's African. I mean, I was concerned for you about that. I really was worried.
I found that, you know, I had heard things about working with them as well, you know, like that it was a tough place for filmmakers. But you know, when I went and I sat with Nate, right? Nate Moore, who's the executive producer. And it's gonna sound crazy, but as soon as I sat down with him, like Nate's black, you know, and he works at Marvel. So the first thing I said, I didn't know there was any black people working at Marvel, you know. And he was like, oh, there's plenty of us, right? You know, you just don't see us on TV. You know, I think Sue Ellen is probably here. Is Sue Ellen here? Sue Ellen, another black person that works at Marvel, right there. Sue Ellen is from Zimbabwe. But she works at Marvel. But yeah, he was like, oh no, there's plenty of us, you know. And then we started talking, and then you know, I went in to meet with them, and I found them to be, you know, it's a small company, you know, it's not a lot of people, you know, and I found them to be really open, you know. You got to communicate, you know what I'm saying? Like, for me, it was about communicating what I was trying to do, what I was interested in, what I wasn't interested in. You know, and I wanted to know what they were interested in. What
did they tell you they wanted Black Panther to be? Did they say
They said that we want him to be our James Bond. That was where they were at. Cause I know that they work on stuff. I know they weren't just sitting around waiting for somebody to come in because they had a release date. You know, and they had met with other filmmakers about the project. You know, who I call my sister, Ava DuVernay, was talking to him for a little bit, and they parted ways. You know, and for them, they were like, I was like, you know, that's the first thing I said. Like, what do y'all see him as? Like, how do y'all see this playing out? And they were like, well, we think he could be our James Bond. You know, the Marvel Cinematic Universe doesn't have somebody like James Bond, and we figured that T'Challa could be that. And when they said that was something that I hadn't thought of, but it was an idea that I liked quite a bit. And I'm always interested in sitting down in a meeting and somebody says something that I haven't thought of. That's cool. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's the best. Those are the best meetings. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So I was kind of taken at that, and we started to talk. You know, before we said yes to each other, we started to talk and pitch ideas. And when I kind of figured out that I wanted this film to be about a conversation between the diaspora and Wakanda, if it existed. You know what I'm saying? And they were like, let's do it. So I was like, cool. We made it.
What was the first screening of Black Panther like, that audience?
First, the premiere of Black Panther.
Yeah.
It was intense, man. It was intense. Like, Abel was there. Kendrick was there. George Lucas was there with Melody. So it was like, I was really nervous. You know, there's a lot of people that made me. I was incredibly nervous. But the most important thing was I had like 50 family members there, including like my nearly 90-year-old grandmother and my nearly 90-year-old father-in-law, like my Zenzi's grandmother. Like, so we had a lot of wheelchairs. So I was like pushing wheelchairs, like trying to find ramps, and my wife was pushing. You know, it's like it's so you like I'm like it's like wheelchair here. It's like, oh, what's up, Kendrick? You know what I mean? Wheelchair. You know, and it was all these elaborate. It was all these elaborate adornments. You know what I mean? Like very very elaborate dress. You know, so it was also like you'll be walking. And then you'll see like Issa Rae, who I hadn't met yet, but I you know, obviously emailed before, just like head to toe in this, you know, in this elaborate dress, you know what I mean? So it's like, oh, hey, what's up? You know, so a lot of people that you meeting for the first time that you had heard of or maybe talked to on a text message, but it felt like a family reunion for a family you didn't know you had yet. If that makes sense.
No. It's like going to Africa for the first time.
Yeah, it was intense.
And because I met you the first screening of Fruitvale, what do you remember about that?
Oh man, I was equally nervous. I was at Sundance, and it was cold. A lot of people, and it was a weird feeling because it's like, oh yeah, people are like fighting to get into this movie that they haven't seen yet, you know. And I was like, yo, what if it's bad? You know what I'm saying? Like, like, what if nobody likes it? And like Oscar's family was there, and they were seeing it for the first time, so I was like terrified that they wouldn't like it, you know what I mean, or they would be hurt by it. So I was just crazy nervous.
Well, because I remember that moment, that last scene, you could hear that gasp in the audience. Is that when you really knew you had the movie that worked?
Man,
Because I just remember that. That thing that people never, it's a moment you never hear in movies because nobody can get it right. But
yeah. I was too busy watching Oscar's family to really know. I was sitting right behind them, and I was really just the whole time it was playing. I was kind of watching them, you know, and so I wasn't as in tune to the audience as I probably should have been. But afterwards, I realized that it affected people.
what did they say after they saw it?
Yeah, it was. They said some pretty emotional stuff. You know, I haven't thought about it in a while. Specifically that night. You know, I think about them often. But they said it felt like he was like he was alive again for a little bit.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Well, what did your family say that you got to make this movie Creed that basically they kind of pushed you into making your entire life in one way or another?
They were excited, man. Creed was different. Like Fruitvale is an incredibly sad movie. You know, like and it's designed that way. Like it's designed to put the audience in the position of his family and to feel like they felt after Oscar was taken from them. Creed was designed like more like a traditional sports film, like a Rocky film, to make you feel like jumping out of your seat at the end if we did our job right. So I was really excited to make that, like, and not, you know, put everybody through something that's so tumultuous as emotionally as Fruitvale was. And with Creed, it was great because it was about my family, but at the same time, it wasn't. You know what I'm saying? Like it wasn't so personal that people, you know, knew our business. You know what I'm saying? But they could still go out and have a blast and it was fun because, you know, it was fun releasing the film with Warner Brothers. So they took care of my family. They took my dad out of the country for the first time. We showed it in London. Oh. And my dad had never left the country. You know, he was in his 50s. You know what I'm saying? He was like scared to get on the plane and everything. And we screened the film out there with him and my mom, and he had a blast. And now he like always trying to get back to London. You know what I'm saying? we got to get him to France.
Yes, you do.
Yeah.
What about Stallone when he saw Creed for the first time? Because you actually made him vulnerable. I mean, that must have been a tough conversation to tell him he had to be, and maybe that's why he rejected the first time, the idea of making Rocky really physically vulnerable like that.
It was something that was tough for him to get around, but then in the end he was happy to, like while we were working on it, you know. But he's a really complicated man, Stallone, you know. You know, he's been through a whole lot, and while we were making the film, it was right after he had just lost his son, you know. And in the film, his son is not there. His son is away from him. You know what I'm saying. So that was pretty raw for him emotionally too, and that was something that he would like. You know, we kind of had to approach. You know, he and I had to approach gingerly. You know, but he was open to it, man, and extremely supportive. He's crazy smart. And he's got like a lot going on in his head, like you know, because he's a director, he's a writer, he's an actor, you know, he's a producer, and he's been a movie star since before I've been alive. You know what I'm saying? So it's all of these things. So when Sly says something to you, you know what I'm saying? Like I kind of got to discern which part of his head is talking to me at the time. You know what I'm saying? And he would always have like really valid thoughts, man. Like, you know, he would come to set. If we had to shoot maybe a page and a half, he would have like 5 pages of notes, like handwritten notes. You know what I'm saying? And then he would come in the morning and say, "Hey Ryan, man, this was what I'm thinking." You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, I can go this way, I can go that way. You know what I mean? Like, but if I go that way, then I gotta bring it back here. You know, what do you think about that? You know what I'm saying? So it was, you know, we would have those conversations, but. He's really, really sharp, crazy funny. Really different from Rocky. You know what I'm saying? Like
I
that's
hope.
yeah, yeah. So
I just wonder what it's like to direct somebody like that who's not only been famous since before you were born, but has owned this character since before you were born. I mean, what do you tell him? How do you get him to listen to you?
I mean, a big thing for me was one thing he was concerned with was me and Mike's work ethic going into it. Like he would often say, "Do y'all know how much work this is going to require?" He was very concerned about that. So for us, it was just like to try to never let him see us not working. You know what I'm saying? Like really earn it. Like go hard as I could. And I think once he realized how hard we worked, you know what I'm saying, and how much we respected it, he was good. You know what I mean? Like he was just, he was there for support. And in terms of directing him, it's like you direct anybody else, but you just listen way more. You know what I'm saying? Because he's gonna come with so much, so many more ideas, and he's got so much more experience. So for him, I would have maybe one conversation before we do something, and then I'll just see what he brought. You know what I'm saying? And then he'll get it all out, and then we'll play.
Well, for a last question, let me ask you this. Now that you've done Black Panther, because you basically have taken, everything you've done has been in the way an adaptation. Fruitvale's a real story. Creed is kind of your lift. You're moving Rocky into the next thing. Black Panther is something you sort of took this, you coalesced a bunch of ideas and brought your own thing to it. Do you want your next thing to be an original, or do you want it to be?
That's a great question. I'm not sure. I'm not totally sure. I'd love to make something original one day. I really would. But at the same time, I think that it's also no shame in adapting stuff. A lot about Kubrick. You know what I'm saying? Kubrick is looked at as one of the great filmmakers, one of the ones that kind of paved a lot of trails, and he almost always adapted something. So I think that adaptations are great as well. But I hope to make something original sometime soon.
Let's thank this man for being here today.
Thank you, guys.